posterior tooth arrangements. Mark a line on the occlusal surface of the lower occlusal rim corresponding to the lower residual ridge and extend the line on the land area of the mandibular cusp posterior to the retromolar pad. This line represents the central groove of the lower posterior teeth. Mark a line on the occlusal surface of the upper occlusal rim, line connecting the midpoint of the lateral incisor and the line on the land area posterior to the tuberosity, which is exactly opposite to the line on the land area posterior to the retromolar pad. This line represents the palatal cusp of the upper posterior teeth. Placement of maxillary first premolar. The outline of the maxillary posteriors are marked on the maxillary occlusal rim with a heated wax cover and the required amount of wax is scooped out. The buccal cusp tip of the maxillary first premolar is in contact with the occlusal plane and palatal cusp is 1 mm short of the occlusal plane. The long axis of the maxillary first premolar is parallel to the vertical axis. The long axis of the maxillary first premolar is placed parallel to the vertical axis when viewed from the front. When viewed from the front, only small amount of buccal surface should be visible. Second premolar. The buccal cusp tip and the palatal cusp should be in contact with the occlusal plane and the long axis should be parallel to the vertical axis. Maxillary first molar. The long axis of the maxillary first molar is inclined distally in relation to the vertical axis. Only the mesiopalatal cusp is in contact with the occlusal plane. The maxillary first molar is slightly inclined when viewed from the front. When patient smiles, very minimal buccal surface should be visible when viewed from the front. Maxillary second molar. The long axis of the maxillary second molar is distally inclined in relation to the vertical axis when viewed from the front. All the cusps are short of the occlusal plane. The second molar is slightly buccally inclined when viewed from the front. Mandibular first premolar. The outline of the mandibular first premolar is marked on the mandibular occlusal rim with the heated wax cover. The outlined area and required amount of wax is scooped out. The long axis of the tooth is placed parallel to the vertical axis when viewed from the front. The long axis of the mandibular first premolar should be inclined lingually when viewed from the front. The buccal surface of the tooth should be barely visible when viewed from the front. Mandibular second premolar is placed between the maxillary first and second premolar, which is parallel to the vertical axis when viewed from the front. The lower first molar is placed below the maxillary first molar. The mesiobuccal cusp of the maxillary first molar should rest on the mesiobuccal groove of the mandibular first molar. The mandibular first molar is slightly lingually inclined. The second molar is placed on the occlusal rim below the maxillary second molar. The mesiobuccal cusp of the maxillary molar should rest on the mesiobuccal groove of the mandibular second molar. This tooth is positioned slightly lingually inclined when viewed from the front. The buccal surface area is barely visible.